Hello. Hi, Eileen. How about you?
Hi, it's good to see you.
Good
Thanks for
to see you
joining.
too. Thank you for conducting the webinar. Happy to see you.
Good evening, dear all. Thank you for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to see all of you. Thanks for dedicating this time to your professional development and to stay connected with the EWB community. And with great pleasure, let me introduce our speaker today, Ilene Giamanco. Ilene Giamanco has more than 12 years of teaching experience across over 20 countries. She's been teaching to different cultures, to different age groups. She found joy in leading teacher training workshops as an English language fellow. And in the past 3 years, she has taught educators in Tajikistan. As you know, many of you had chance to meet Eileen during EWB regional and national conferences, also in Uzbekistan and in Vietnam. She is currently supporting English teaching assistants in Uzbekistan. Also, Eileen is an active EWB member, which makes us especially happy. So with this this is a great pleasure to host Eileen as a webinar speaker today. So dear participants, as you know, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So I really hope that you will have some great questions that you can ask Eileen right away. And dear Facebook viewers, you also will have chance to ask your questions to Eileen. So dear Eileen, over to you.
Thank you, Zuhro. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Parvina, Dilfuza. I think I saw Zabo here, and Samira. Thank you for joining, and to everyone on Facebook. It's my pleasure to be here as just a really huge fan of EWB and also all things connected to Tajikistan. So I miss you all, but it's good to see you online. So let's get started. Today I'm going to talk about, now this could be relatable to anything connected to either projects for younger students. I was mostly thinking about higher educators here, but it can be connected to homework assignments that are a little bit more in depth, and anything that you will use as a formative or summative assessment, where students are just doing a little bit more work, either in their own time or in groups. And so I hope that you find this meaningful today. Okay, let's start with a scenario to get you all engaged. I'm going to read this scenario out loud, and this is a true story of something that happened to me and really inspired me to create this kind of topic to share about. So a student scenario, my teacher gave us a presentation task, and when I delivered my presentation, my teacher said, "Great job. That was really good." So positive. But then the teacher got this, the student got the score, and it was a 3 out of 5. And the teacher and the student felt a little disappointed. I thought everything was good, so I'm not sure what I did wrong. Now I don't want to try so hard next time. What's the point? So I'd love to hear from you all, if you can share your thoughts on what happened in this scenario. What was the disconnect between the four?
Can I? Yeah, I think they was disconnected with teacher because the student tried to do his or her best, but the teacher, instead of giving motivation, said such kind of words that it was not too good to hear to the student. So, but in the other side, when the teacher have to say says good words, the student will be motivated. In any case, the teacher should help to the student to motivate in her success.
Hello, Teacher Ellen. Can
Yes,
you hear
yes.
me?
Thank you for sharing, Delfusa.
So, hello,
Anyone else? Sadbar, hi.
Yeah, I also want to share my point of view regarding this situation. I think that when the teacher said, great job, that was really good, and then the student got 3 out of 5, I think that the teacher, when she gave her feedback, she should say exactly what was great about the presentation and what maybe there were some weaknesses, something that the student can do better. And I think that when the teacher shouldn't just give a mark 3 out of 5, but mention why it was like this, like what was the weakness of presentation. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's our job to encourage our students and to make them feel confident, especially during a presentation. But what Sadvar had mentioned is the feedback wasn't as specific and there wasn't any maybe mention of areas that they could have improved at the same time of things that they did really well. So yeah, thank you. I'm going to move on unless anyone wants to share anything in the comments. Feel free to do so. So let's kind of keep this example in mind as we go a little bit more in depth into what students need to help them feel like they've succeeded. So this is a book that I like to share when it comes to just getting people to think about what's the point of independent tasks or any project work, group work. Why are we having students do these things? Well, independent tasks is a little bit more on heavy work on the students' part. Maybe they're not doing necessarily group work, but it's anything that's outside of the classroom. So just thinking about the big picture, because students also need to understand the purpose in these kinds of assignments. I'm going to introduce some information that I received from this website. And I think, I'm sorry, I forgot the website, but I do have it at the very end. I've cited it at the end of my slides. And the whole idea is about scaffolding. How many of you have heard this term before, a scaffold? And if so, what does it mean? Feel free to share in the chat or unmute. Scaffold, what does it mean?
So, sorry, can you repeat?
Yes, have you heard the word scaffold before in connection to education? And if so, what do you understand it to be?
Eileen, we also have some participants writing their comments in the chat.
Okay. So scaffold, let's see, step by step. Okay, step by step. Anyone else? Scaffold.
I think it's a breaking up the learning into or
Okay,
providing a
that's
tool or
definitely one part.
structure with each
Mhm.
chunk. For example, when scaffolding is reading, for example, we might preview the text and discuss.
Yeah, and if you look at this picture here, you can see a building. So this is like scaffold is usually related to construction. So if we are building something new and we want to build a strong foundation, we need to be able to put in supports or else the whole thing's going to crumble. So it definitely is a step-by-step support, but it can be multiple scaffolds at the same time embedded into the delivery so that students feel confident in completing any kind of task. So now this article written by an experienced teacher, she provides 18 ways in this link. However, today I'm just only going to touch on a few. So I'm going to go ahead and explain those and then talk about them in detail.
For example, we can use in everything. Yeah? For example, when we use in reading, before reading a text, we should find the key vocabulary. Yeah. Then read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we're setting them up with lots of support. Now, of course, the support system is going to differ depending on your student's proficiency level. But these scaffolds are available to, especially if you have mixed ability in one class, to students who need more. And if they don't need more, then you can remove the scaffolds. And so they're flexible within the lesson. So the first one is setting clear expectations. Again, that goes back to why are we doing this? The students need to know why. The teachers also need to explain why, what's the objectives, what's the overall purpose. Giving examples of high quality work will set them up to understand what your expectations are, and then handing out the rubric at the very beginning. So when describing the task description, also telling them how they can meet or try to achieve that high score that they're looking for. So setting clear expectations. Another example from the article are checklists and rubrics. And then, as you said, Delfuza, this breaks it down into chunks. Students are able to complete one part of the assignment at a time. For example, if it's a writing assignment, having the students just create an outline first and then checking that, or they're creating a first draft and then helping them through the process of revision. So breaking it down, chunking the assignment, giving them multiple deadlines to do that, like over the course. And then the checklist also helps them assess their own work. So if a student asks you, teacher, if I do this, will it be okay? And then you refer back to the rubric or the checklist and say, well, if you were grading yourself, what kind of grade would you give yourself? And so this creates autonomy within student learning as well. They can reflect on their own progress. Think aloud scaffold is really good to kind of give students the words to put into their brain when going through any kind of a long task. This is thinking through something like a process and then putting words to it. So you're sharing what you're thinking, you're modeling, if this were me, I think that I would write this sentence this way, and then I would try to see what it sounds like to myself. And so now you're modeling the revision or the editing, self-editing process. I'm going to give you an example of what that would look like as well in a minute. Graphic organizers are a great tool for helping students organize their thinking before, during, or after the lesson. Here are some examples. Especially in writing, those graphic organizers are a really great support system to help students build up to. Maybe they need to put their ideas on paper in some kind of visual map or chart, and then from there they can create sentences and details. Now they know how to organize their paragraphs into creating a collective essay as a whole. But it's not just for writing. It could be for reading something as well, thinking about a concept that's new to them. So graphic organizers. And I think I have one more. And sentence stems. Sentence stems are probably, again, a little bit more for beginner level or intermediate level. Maybe at the advanced level, you can take away this scaffold, but it could be good just to kind of give students a starting point. Sometimes, maybe even in writing or speaking in those productive domains, that they just don't even know where to get started. So giving them those first few words or those first few phrases can really get the ball rolling and eliminate that thinking time. So sentence stems for speaking or for writing. And yes, technology, as you all know, and I know sometimes that's challenging, but if you have it available, using it as a scaffold, especially if you're doing research. What I've observed in many classes is that teachers will say like, okay, now go and look. But the chances are students are going on sources that are not credible, or even just not valuable, or they're defaulting to AI because it's easier. So when we're giving them the websites that will help them with the information and be a little bit more academic and a little bit more credible, now we're showing them how to be a researcher by just telling them which websites to use. Okay. All right, so I'm going to spend about just 10 minutes going over an example. But before I move on to my example, does anyone have any questions about the specific scaffolds that I've mentioned?
Teacher, I have just joined late a minute ago.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, teacher. Do you share the slide in group in Telegram
Yes,
channel?
Zuhro, do you want to speak to that? I think we're sharing it, right?
Hello. Yes, dear participants, as you might know, after our webinars, we post the recordings on our Facebook, and all materials that speakers share with us, we share on our website. But let's leave questions to the end of the webinar. And right now, let's focus more on the topic of the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to an example using multiple scaffolds in one task. And this was for an upper intermediate class at a university. And the topic was cultural presentation. Now I'm going to show you what it looked like in their textbook. And then I'm going to show you how I included scaffolds to encourage more student success for their final product. Okay. All right, so students were learning about cultures all around the world. And this is a picture from their textbook. It says, work with a partner. But we made this an independent task, so it was going to go in the grade book. Select 3 or 4 of the words from exercise 3B, so that's these words to the left, and give an example from your country or from another country you know well. So students had already learned some of these words in previous units and lessons: climate, cuisines, institutions, rituals, historical events, customs, traditions. So these are words that were pre-taught in a previous lesson. Now we're just having them apply their knowledge. You can see that the task is not very clear, and also what students need to produce is not very clear. So I worked with another local teacher, and we needed to make this a little bit more supportive for students to be successful and for them to receive an individual grade. So we broke it down to the task description. Now we're being a little bit more specific of what they will do. So each student will research. We wanted to make sure that on a foreign country's culture. The presentation will be no longer than 5 minutes and contain 6 slides. So we're making it very, very clear the time length, how many slides they need. The presentation will include 4 of the following topics related to culture. So these terms or topics were taken from the textbook. Now we include those objectives. Public speech is a really important skill to work on and help your students become successful in. That's a skill they need to be able to be a great communicator outside of their class. Increasing global awareness. These students specifically were studying to become future diplomats of their country. And so this is a valuable goal for them. And so we want to make sure that it connects to the overall goal. We're telling them the why. We're wanting to helping them refine summary skills. This was a skill that they have been taught and maybe not mastered so well. And so we need to have them practice this a little bit more. The teacher also was teaching them how to do appropriate citations. And so the teacher had taught them in a previous writing task. Now they need to practice it a little bit more. And then of course, those key concepts related to culture. Here was the rubric, but we made it into a checklist format. So students were able to see these were the things that we were looking for. Notice there's no number because we're giving them the highest level of success. And if they have all of these things, then they would automatically receive a high score. We broke it down by category. Okay. We provided the helpful resources using that technology. National Geographic, BBC Travel, and Voice of America. Those are all really great, credible websites for the students to become familiar with. And it requires them to do a little bit more research than just copying and pasting from Wikipedia or from AI. A graphic organizer was provided for them to do the research, making sure they have the 4 key points, a summary of what they've read, and then which website or which resource did they use to find this information. Now, again, students do not need to use this if it's not necessary. It was just provided for them to help them. And then finally, I gave them an example. But during the example, I also did a think aloud. So I thought to myself in front of the class, and I just took maybe 5 minutes to do this. What kind of country would I like to become familiar with? Even though the textbook said your country, that's not going to help increase their global awareness. So we want to expand their knowledge into new countries. So I thought to myself, what's a country that I would be interested in? And they kind of helped me think through this as well. They suggested the Netherlands. I said, well, that's a great idea. I don't know very much information about that. So I'm going to now go on these websites in class, and I'm going to show them where I would look for the information. I'd go on Britannica website, and I would look through the Netherlands. I would look for the key information, and I would say to myself, I think this is useful. I'm going to put this information into my PowerPoint. And how would I summarize this in my own words? And so I did that in front of them. Notice I'm modeling just 2 to 3 words, maybe only 3 PowerPoints. A lot of times in presentations, students will copy entire paragraphs, and they'll stand there and read the entire paragraph. And that loses the value of just sharing the key points. So I'm modeling to them. I'm also including the visuals. And I'm also thinking to myself out loud what I would want to say and what pictures I would want to include in my PowerPoint. Once I did this first slide, all of the students were clearly understood what they needed to do. So I'm going to move on because I have like some other slides. This is the works cited page. They must have their works cited in the appropriate format. And here's an example of what it should look like. So we gave the students, I think it was about a week to complete this task. And then they were to come back to class the following week and show us the work that they had finished on their own. So here's one example. The student had chosen a country in the African continent. And you can see based on the slides that more or less they followed the template, the example. And when they came up to share in front of the class, that they had to focus on that speaking piece. But you can see the presentation itself pretty much was successfully completed. Okay, now using the rubric or the checklist, the same checklist that we gave them in the beginning, we made a note of where they were strong in and where they were weak in. There was some written feedback as well, but I blocked that out for this example. Again, there is no number here. So it's really up to the teacher's discretion what this final score would be, but you can see that they've missed many areas in the language and also the oral presentation. I think this score ended up being like a 3.8 or something out of 5. But you can see that it's clear which areas they were strong in and which areas they needed to improve. Okay, so this is, what would be handed back to the students so that they would be able to review and improve for the next presentation areas that they needed to improve. Now, once I ask teachers and I show them these things, one of the questions I get is how much time does that take? Because that feels like a lot of work. But I want to kind of make this a little bit more interactive and thinking like, what would you do to set this example task up for students? What kind of scaffolds would you use? So I have one example. This was taken from the same textbook. Write a travel blog of a trip you have made either in your country or abroad. Mention any unusual or interesting experiences you had and describe 1 or 2 sites. Try to use some of the new vocabulary that you have learned. So as a teacher, if this was a task in your textbook, what's the first scaffold that you would provide? Feel free to unmute or type in the chat.
We should put the sentences into the order, you mean? Or what should we do in this case?
No, in this case, if this was your task, what scaffold would you give your students?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think, Ellen, I would like to share.
Yes, Parvina. Or who's speaking?
Okay, Parvina, you can. Parvina.
Okay. For the first things that I am going to chunk, it would be the aim of my travel blog or trip that we made with my students. The aim of that we had the trip or this kind of traveling.
Okay, so are you saying that you would have them, that you would provide the objectives, like why we are writing this travel blog? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And what are some writing skills that students would improve during writing a travel blog? They're using descriptive languages. They're using sequential types of writing, phrases like first we did this, then we did this. And so those are all specific writing skills that we would have to share with them of why we're doing this. Great, thank you. Who's next?
So I also want to share, maybe first of all, they would go to some sites where people share about their blog of traveling or some trips that they have. And then we can, as you have shown us in the previous presentation, like we can ask them to write specifically about some aspects of their trip, not about generally about their trip, or maybe about food that they had there, maybe new people that they meet there. Yeah, they can write about
That's
this.
an excellent scaffold, Sadbarg. Giving them the examples of how people are doing this in real life, and then using that as a model of saying, oh, now I see what a successful travel blog looks like. Great, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I
Yeah, maybe
also
also
first.
depending on the level that they are studying in, so maybe some new words that they learned, they can also use them when they are writing about their, if the topic is relevant, of course, if the topic is relevant to the trip, so they can also use those vocabulary there.
Absolutely. Those descriptive words that are describing the 2 places that they visited. And then any other new vocabulary may be connected to culture that they have learned in other lessons. Yeah, great idea.
Yeah,
Still,
as you
did you want
mentioned,
to say something?
yeah, I would like to say that, for example, as you mentioned, first we would, I would show a modeling. For example, where did I travel, and what was interesting for me in that country. I will be specific, and also I will give them a list of words that they will use during this trip. And as you mentioned, if you remember sandwich, they was give them this or graphic as a sandwich. Also, I think a graphic organizer. Yes, I will show them and
Absolutely.
say firstly what should they do. Secondly, last. Modeling is the best way
Yeah.
for students to improve their.
Yeah, a sandwich is a great graphic organizer for showing them how to organize their writing, their thoughts. You want to start with
Yeah.
a catchy phrase in the beginning, and then you
Mhm.
want to develop your middle, or like the meaty part of your writing, and then finish it with some kind of conclusion to summarize
Yeah,
what you
like
said.
summarize.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Thanks.
Absolutely great. And notice that this is like they're having to produce language here. So even if they were lower level students, in addition to the example, also giving them some sentences to help them start with their writing and kind of get them going instead of just freezing and taking so much time thinking about their ideas. Okay, anyone else would like to share what scaffold you would use? We're forgetting one key component that is helpful for them to be successful. Zebo, did you want to say something?
أنا موجودة going to the لمست قشوق.
Okay. What I would add is that the objectives, as you mentioned, but also the rubric. So giving them what they need to have, like a checklist before completing this task so that they can self-assess themselves. Now, like I said, teachers often say to me, this feels like so much work. We already have so much work. How can we do all of these scaffolding? It takes too much time. And that's why I think that there is beauty in using AI for this generation for at least supporting you in your teaching. You're right, this does take time. So I'm going to show you some ways that I have used ChatGPT to help me, and I'm going to use this specific example task. So this was an example of a travel blog to summer Kant, and I put that prompt into ChatGPT, and then it gave me an example. But I like the idea of students going on real travel blogs. I think that's a great way to start research as well. So here's one example. And then we would go through the example and kind of analyze the words that are being used, words like brilliant or compelling, absorbing atmosphere, stunning architecture. And we would take those phrases and then use them in our own writing. Okay, here is the objectives, what we're doing. We're engaging in content, we're enhancing descriptive writing, and we're also focusing on the writing as a process, learning how to self-edit. And so that all came from ChatGPT. Some sentence frames to help them get started. These all came from AI. And then finally, even our success criteria in a rubric. Now, of course, you don't have to use all of this. You're free to change it however you would like to grade them. If you don't want to focus on so much of the cultural insight, but more on the language, then that's up to you. Or if you wanted to give one area 2 points and the other area maybe 1 point. So the idea is that it is time consuming to create these scaffolds from scratch. So using AI as a way to help us save time and energy, but also we can use this and kind of revise it for what is specific to our students and their needs. Okay, all right. This is the website that I use that I found that article from. We Are Teachers. It is specific to teaching English in the US, but I think that these scaffolds are important for students learning English all around the world. So that's my presentation for today. At this moment, I would like to open up for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ilene. It was a very interesting presentation. I hope that participants learned something new today or developed their knowledge on something they already knew. So, dear participants, if you have any questions regarding the topic of today's webinar, please write your questions in the chat or in the comments if you're watching us on Facebook, or unmute yourself and ask your question. Ilene, I also copied some questions from Facebook, and you can see them in the chat. So let's go through those questions. So the first question is, what is the role of feedback in scaffolding? How can teachers provide constructive feedback that supports students' growth?
That's an excellent question. Wow. So the feedback based on the rubric or the checklist that we give them in the beginning, I think is going to be the most specific form, especially like, let's say, let me go back to that example. So here you can see that the student did an excellent job in the written part. Maybe the slides were well done, but they still need to focus on clear pronunciation when they come up and deliver a speech. So in this case, that would be one student's like personal goal. And the next presentation, we would see if there's any kind of improvement, clear pronunciation. We can also offer specific exercises that would help that student in their own time practice their clear pronunciation. And then maybe we can have them listen to themselves speaking and kind of self-assess their pronunciation. And so there's lots of let me check the chat. I think we lost social.
Yeah, sorry. I have a terrible internet connection. I was just kicked out from Facebook, from Zoom.
Yeah.
But I'm back again. So did you finish answering to the first question, or you wanted to add?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question then. The second question that we got from Facebook is, how can scaffolding help students with motivation or engagement? What strategies can be used to foster intrinsic motivation?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think, again, helping students see, like, number one, I mean, there's no shame, right? I'm not like saying this, I'm not saying these things in front of the class. I'm just writing them down, making notes and handing it back to the student when they're able to look at it themselves. And so I think that their own reflection of how they did really creates that idea of, oh, I see now where I need to improve and where I can go further. I mean, it's also really good, as we said in the beginning, to like encourage them, because we don't, I think, in my opinion, I think low motivation comes from just overall feeling like there's no point. And that comes from being lost in like, well, what can I do to improve? And so showing students like gradually over time, if you just focus on these specific areas, then your next presentation, you're going to do great, or your next assignment or whatever task they're working on in your class, you're going to do great. And so helping them see that there's not a complete loss of hope. And also, I think providing the feedback in the step-by-step. So these students only had 1 week to complete this task, and realistically, I understand that that's kind of maybe not enough time. If it were an ideal situation, I would give them maybe 2 weeks, and then I would check in, like, how are you doing with your presentation? Do you want to practice your presentation in front of me? And then I can give you some help. And then when you come in front of the class, it's a little bit more polished. And so giving them that feedback in the process will also increase motivation. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think this is great tips because unfortunately what happens in many schools and universities is like we receive a grade, like a mark for something, but we don't understand where to move, how to improve ourselves, and this is discouraging. Yes, but when you, instead of getting like this mark, this point, you receive a feedback and you understand your weak points and your strengths. This is where you can find more growth and more motivation. Thank you very much for sharing. Another question coming from Facebook is, what are the signs that scaffolding is working? How can teachers determine if students are becoming more independent?
That's an excellent question. Wow, these questions are great. So I believe that the scaffolding comes with like knowing your students' level. So if my students are at beginning level, I want to give them more scaffolds. Over the course of my, time in my course, I would take away some, but not all of them. If they were advanced students, I would probably give them just a few scaffolds, and then over the course, especially if we did multiple assignments that were similar, then the students already know this is the same rubric I'm going to use for all of your presentations, and the students are familiar, so they kind of don't need all of those scaffolds anymore. They kind of know what my expectations are. I think to absolutely check that they're improving using the scaffolds would be to keep track of this. And I'm a really big fan of tracking growth. And so I would have maybe students create some kind of portfolio, or I would collect all their work and I would have them at the end, like look at the beginning work and then compare it to the end work, and then see areas that they've grown and reflect on that. And that would be a really great kind of summative assessment as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I scrolled through the chat and I didn't find any other questions from our participants in Zoom. But dear participants who are still here, if you have any questions, please unmute yourselves and ask your questions. We have some more time left with Eileen, so please use this opportunity. Okay. Let me one more time check Facebook comments. Okay, it seems no more questions. Then great. Dear participants, again, thank you for joining us today. You can watch the webinar recording on our Facebook page if you missed any parts of it, or if you just want to rewatch the webinar. We will be also publishing the webinar materials on our website. Dear Ilene, thank you very much for dedicating your time and your efforts to the growth of ELT community in Tajikistan. We really appreciate this. To all of you, I wish a great weekend. Tomorrow, don't forget, we are having our regular speaking club on Telegram group, so please join that one too. And then I see you all next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Sufro.
you a
It was so
lot.
nice to
Thanks.
see.
For a great
Yeah,
webinar. See you.
see you.